This morning I asked for some suggestions of what you would like me to talk about. So you gave me a nice suggestion, but I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, I will. And it was about perception. And all of these perceptions we have, it's like we do have options to perceive things in so many different ways. A good example of that is when I was a young monk in Thailand. Sometimes I would see all the animals crawling on the ground and on the walls and on the ceilings. And one of my experiences in Thailand, in one monastery, it was a very hot monastery. So during the daytime there was no aircon or fans or anything. So I just had my lower robe on and bare from the waist upwards. And sometimes be meditating there, and some of the animals would got a bit hot and they would fall from the ceiling. And one of those animals literally was tarantula. We had many tarantulas in that monastery. And they said, "Oh, it must be terrible. Tarantulas would drop on you many times when you were meditating." Yeah. And I really enjoyed them. Honestly, because I was sensually deprived. And they would fall on you and they'd tickle me as they walked over my body. And have you ever experienced this, how pleasant tarantula feet or legs are as they're walking on you? It really was tickly. And so that kind of happened naturally. But then afterwards, when I told people, they thought I was crazy. Actually, they thought I was crazy beforehand, but even more so now, when I enjoyed my friends the tarantulas falling off the roof and just crawling all over me. They never ever bit me because I never got scared. It just showed how you can perceive things in so many different ways. And many other things which you try to perceive in different ways. It showed you that most of your world is actually conditioned. Good example is, with things like tarantulas or snakes. Are you afraid of snakes and tarantulas? Really? Sometimes I just considered, a snake, what business has a snake with me? The snake can't eat me. I'm too big. If they try to swallow me, they get very disappointed. And that's one of the reasons why in our meditations, our practices, we find that our perceptions do change. And things which we're normally afraid of, we just can't be afraid. It's not that someone tells us not to, it just makes no sense. So I still remember my preceptor, who was a very senior monk in Thailand. I never realized that every monk's training, even in those only monk-centered places, they always include some training in meditation. Because I was going to just pay respects to him one day. He hadn't arrived yet, so I just sat down and meditated to wait for him. And then when I heard him arriving, then I sort of came out of my meditation, and he said, that I saw you meditating there. He was a bit jealous of me, because as a senior monk, I had so much business to do, and you understand this, you don't have enough time to meditate. And so, one of the nice things he said afterwards, he said, when I saw you meditating so peacefully, and I remembered all those times when I was a very young monk, just in training, and how I used to meditate very peacefully. And one day his teacher told him to go and meditate in a coconut grove, simply because it was nice and peaceful there. And so he was sitting there, and he got a nice deep meditation, and when he came out afterwards, he noticed there was a very dangerous, very venomous snake coiled up in his lap. And when he looked at that venomous snake, It was one of those snakes that his parents and teachers had told him to be really careful of, because they can really harm you. And so when he saw it, what surprised him, he had no fear at all. He just was looking at it, and it was nicely coiled up, just enjoying the warmth of his lap. So why not meditate a bit longer to give that little snake a little bit more happiness? And that's what he did. And after about 15 minutes, the snake just uncoiled and just slithered off harmlessly. And he said that was so wonderful to see all those perceptions of what he should be afraid of disappeared. He was so peaceful and so happy, and so was the snake. And after a while of living in places like that for so many years, you realize that none of those animals will ever harm you if you're kind to them. No spirits can ever harm you if you're kind to them. Nothing can really harm you. And sometimes I'm really surprised at being in very difficult situations. You change your perceptions, and one of the perceptions that I like generating is fun. And one of those dangerous situations which I was in years ago was when I was visiting London. I was staying in my mother's apartment, and every day in the evening I would just offer to give a talk wherever. And this one evening was at the London Buddhist Vihara. At that time, that was over in, not Heathfield Gardens? Yeah, Heathfield Gardens, was it? Anyways, the old Sri Lankan Vihara. And I knew the area so well, I grew up there. So when I was walking to the Vihara, I was going down one of the lanes past one of these big housing estates, like tower blocks. And it was supposed to be a hotbed of crime. Lots of unemployed people and lots of young people without any jobs, not doing well in their education. So whilst I was walking towards this place in Acton Lane, that I saw these kids already starting to congregate. And they took one look at me, bald head, brown robed. And what do young hoodlums do? They want to intimidate you. So they started looking at me, about 5 or 6 of them at the beginning, and started chanting, Buddha, 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 like louder and louder and closer together. And some more of those hoodlums joined in. It was about 12 or 14. I had a choice. I could turn around and run. I could just go to the left or go to the right. There's alternative routes. But I love to play with my perceptions and the perceptions of others. So I just carried on walking straight towards them. Buddha, 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 Buddha! Louder and louder. When I got to maybe 3 or 4 yards apart from them, I was still just walking the same pace, not showing any fear, and then I lifted up my hands. I have never trained in Kung Fu. The only thing I know about it, before I became a monk, there was a TV series called Kung Fu. And I remember I was a school teacher before I became a monk and told all the school teachers, "Hey, there's a really good show to watch, it's Kung Fu Buddhist." And they said, "Why is every episode so violent?" They had a good point. But anyway, these kids never realized I just made the pose and I wasn't showing any fear. Bald head, brown robes. What does that do? The perception that this might be, on my own, a Kung Fu master. They didn't know. But they dared take the chance of testing me out. So as I walked right close to them, they parted and let me walk straight through without changing my pace, I'll go to the left or right. When I got to the other side of them, I put my hands down. That was very scary. I was very lucky. Some of the things I do like that, I look back at them afterwards and say, ooh, that was a close call. But nevertheless, it was using my own perception, make sure that, let go of the fear and just have some fun. I was enjoying that. I knew I was going to give a talk about 15 minutes after that experience, and I always like new stories to talk about. So I was thinking, thank you guys for giving me another anecdote to tell. But a lot of the time, your perceptions, they can free you or they can limit you. Which would you prefer? Obviously, I enjoy having fun and laughing at some of the silly things which I get up to. And also at the same time, just noticing how perception is not fixed. What actually is it? You have a certain amount of data coming into your mind or brain, and you have a choice which one you want to choose and how you want to deal with it. So over the years you developing perceptions so you can be really effective in this world, help a lot of other people and feel safe. One of those perceptions, actually many of those perceptions were taught by Ajahn Chah. Remember, he told me, it's really good advice. He said, one day, your job will not be just to teach meditation, but to sit down and listen to people with their problems. And he said, you should always remember this. If you're ever going to be a counselor, listen to people, please perceive that you are a waste paper basket. But the amazing thing about this simile, a waste paper basket with a hole in the bottom. So people can put their waste inside of you, and it goes right through you, don't keep anything afterwards. I kind of like that idea, because otherwise you get full, and you get burdened, you get heavy. A lot of times, people say, Ajahn Brahm, hi. He said, why don't you worry about things? I receive it, let it fill me up, and when I get up, it's all left here. It's amazing. You've seen me do that so many times. And it's wonderful, you perceive yourself in a way which is very positive. The last thing you ever want to do is reject anything. When you get rejected, that perception, which I often found very important, I've said it many times, that whoever you see, whoever you talk with, whoever you're just with, you make sure that they're the most important person in the world. Right now, you're the most important person in the world, because you're right in front of me. No longer. Now he is. But what that does means you really listen to somebody. That's how you communicate. Sometimes if I listen to you without sort of getting that connection, there's no real relationship, there's no real communication there. If you look at somebody and then you know they're not listening to you, the communication relationship just disappears. You cannot teach. You cannot sort of understand what the other person is thinking about or their emotional response. So the perception is where you allow that information to come from one person to the other person. And one of the other things which I often do when someone's right in front of me, they say to be kind. I also like to smile. I love playing around with the perception of happiness. Because if you smile at people, they smile back. No matter what religion, race or whatever. And even the perceptions when a person is really sick and having a lot of difficulty. That's why I learned so many jokes. And one poor lady, she was our secretary many years ago. And she said she was in hospital, she just had a hysterectomy. I'm a male. I can't really figure out just how important that is. But at least you can listen to someone, look at their face, look at their eyes, their physical movements, and you get some feeling and understanding. For her, it was really important. As a woman, that's the end of any possibility of being pregnant anymore. And she's still reasonably young. And she said, please, can you come and visit me just to cheer me up? Because being by oneself, your perceptions can very easily get into negativity. But she said one thing, but Ajahn Brahm, please come and visit me, but please don't tell any jokes. Because the wound is like a vertigo, and once you start laughing, you can't, it really hurts. I must be a bit sadistic because I really told so many jokes. But she said thank you afterwards. She'd rather have the discomfort but the funny new ways of perceiving things, with some humour, rather than anything else. That's one of the reasons why many of the the funny perceptions which I have is about spirits. Do you like spirits? Which type? Beer? Alcohol? So, okay, once I start on this, I can't stop. You all know that story of the guy over the Easter time. Not the Easter time, the Christmas time, the year time. Had an office party. Do you keep your precepts when you go to office parties? This guy was really trying hard to keep his precepts. When people offered him alcohol, he said, no, I can't drink alcohol, I'm a Buddhist. And the person serving the alcohol replied, Buddhism, that's such a wonderful spiritual path. It's all about letting go. Come on, let go, have a beer. He said it didn't work. So the next thing he said, when he went to a party, he found the right way of refusing alcohol. When somebody offered him a beer, he replied, I cannot drink anything alcoholic. Doctor's orders. People don't respect religion as much as doctor's orders. But I said, look, there's nothing wrong with you. You can't keep one of those precepts by breaking another. You're lying. And then he said, no. He said, I was surprised at you, Ajahn Brahm. You always talk about perceptions and how they can maybe used without breaking precepts. It was doctor's orders. Many times in the sutras, the Buddha compared himself to a doctor. It's Dr. Buddha's orders. Which is good. So anyway, the main story I was going to say, I can't resist it. Nothing much to do with the talk, but nevertheless. About the guy who decided to take a chance after a party. He had been drinking alcohol, and as he was driving home, he thought, I must have driven on an unusual route so the police won't stop me. But unfortunately he got it wrong. There was a big roadblock. The police were checking every driver. And when they got to him, this was in New South Wales, and they told him he had to get out of the car before they give him a breathalyzer test, just to check whether he was balanced. So he got out of his car. He walked a few steps. They realized, he was probably over the limit. So they gave him the breathalyzer to breathe into. Have any of you ever breathed into the breathalyzer? No, but anyway, they gave him the breathalyzer to breathe into, And then just as he was about to breathe into it, there was a loud sound of a car crash. One of the cars at this roadblock approaching it had gone too fast and couldn't stop quick enough and got into the car in front of him. And the police officer said, "It's more important that I check on this road incident than check your alcohol level." He took the breathalyzer back, unused. "Go back in your car and go home." He thought he was so lucky. He came within a second or two of getting caught. But this is not the way that karma works. The following morning, he was woken up with a hangover at home, with somebody ringing his doorbell and they wouldn't stop. So he staggered to the door, 2 policemen. If you ever see 2 policemen at your door, you're a bit scared. But he said, "Well, I'm not driving now, they can't do anything." And the policeman said, No, we just want to check your garage." "Yes, okay, so there's my car in there." So he went to the garage, opened it up, and that's where he almost had a heart attack. In his garage. It wasn't his car. There was a police car in there. when they said, "Get in your car and go home," he was so drunk he got in the wrong car. Drove one of theirs home. Anyway, apparently that was a true story. Well, I think he's still in jail. How many years ago was that? I don't know. But anyhow, these are all, many of the funny stories are always about perception. A lot of times when you get to the end of the story, the punchline is what you never really perceived had happened or could be possible. Is that the case? We make use of perception to encourage people with more energy. But sometimes, with actually perceptions, we can also overcome a lot of fear and wanting. What would you really want? Would you like to be really wealthy? Would you like to have all the problems in the Anukampa Bhikkhuni project place all solved? It's attractive, isn't it? Less work. But after a while, you find, no, it's less benefit. You learn so much from working hard. You grow so much. And people respect you so much more. That's why that sometimes many of the things which I've been doing in my life, I'd rather had an alternative, I thought at the time. But after a while, when you trust in the Dhamma, just keep on going, see what will happen. And you usually experience things which you never expected were possible. This is how the perceptions, when you understand them and learn to make use of them, it's amazing what you can do. It's not superhuman. It's just you have this wonderful trust. There's other beings in this world who can help you. Can help you. Not to need to feel afraid of them. And so many times, over in Australia, where I live, the biggest danger there is bushfires. Really big bushfires. You've heard of that place over in Sydney, the Blue Mountains. You know why they're called Blue Mountains? Because in the hot weather, the heat evaporates the eucalypt oil in the trees and in the leaves. And that eucalypt oil makes the air look blue around it. So this whole mountains, forests, are full of blue smoke. That perception.
It fell down a bit. If you can touch it on the other side.
Okay. But anyhow, on those blue mountains, when it gets very hot. You get a blue smoke around the forest, and that blue smoke is a combination of air and eucalypt oil, explosive mix. So much so that, and one little spark, and it's not like a fire, it's like bombs going off. And we had one of those very hot days over in the monastery where I lived many years ago. It was at the time the hottest day ever, 46 degrees. That's pretty hot. Before the fire. When the fire came, we had to evacuate. And all those fires, I could see all the trees. I'm glad we evacuated, because all those trees exploded. Boom! It's scary. It's like bombs going off. But after we evacuated, you saw what was happening there. You thought, there's no way that monastery, which I worked so hard to build, is ever going to survive. Following morning, when I went back there with the fire officer, you saw that monastery. Not even one building was harmed. Going around with these fire officers, and they had a look under these huts, and I remember one of them, the chief fire officer, turned to me and said, "Brahm, this should not be here. How on earth did it get incinerated?" How? I was a scientist. There's more to the world than just science. I say that as a scientist. Animals, beings, things which mostly are close to you because they want to support you and help you, look after you. That's one of the reasons why even to get help sometimes. Sometimes that we do chanting. Chanting is just way the monks and nuns like focus their mind. I do recall many, many times, like this one time when we were going to purchase this piece of land for Dharmasara. Remember Dharmasara? Big monastery. And when we decided it was on auction, you know what we did? We arrived there an hour early. I really chanted, not loudly, but just deeply. If there are heavenly beings here, and if you want this to happen, let's make it happen. And our treasurer at the time was informed that the only amount of money we could raise, at the very maximum, with borrowing from here, borrowing from there, was 600,000 Aussie dollars. During the auction, it was very exciting. Our bidder bid for 600,000. And at that point, I didn't put my hands up because people would have seen me. I just closed my eyes and tried to keep everyone's mouth closed. Yeah, it's a bit cheating, isn't it? And then someone put their hand up, 625. And I felt so sad. It's such a beautiful place, for a big, big, big place for Buddhist nuns. A big place. And then afterwards, our guy, totally against our commands, said 650. I always remember that, our treasurer went ballistic. He can't do that, we can't pay that, what am I going to do? But of course, it passed in at 650. And your perception is, you don't follow rules. Please excuse me. You follow this beautiful sense of inspiration. We paid that off easy, and more. We have nice places for Buddhist nuns. That's one of the first places we had over in Australia. So I'm a terrible person. If you're the treasurer, treasurer of Anukampa Bhikkhuni project. Don't take any advice from me. You get it done. But what's happening there? I'm changing my perceptions into a positive way. And it's amazing because you have those positive, beautiful perceptions. They're not based in truth or in rationality. Somebody asked me can you please justify that? The answer is no. But it works. That makes life so much more enjoyable, fun, and shows you just how anything which is really good you are doing, how it can help. To show you or rather to say something a bit more deep about how this perception works, I often tell this story. This was the time I was in the Cambridge University Psychic Research Society. One of my friends, who actually went much further in the psychic research, was one of Stephen Hawking's offsiders, Bernard Carr. He was a Buddhist, one of my best friends. And Bernard, you can email it, get him on Wikipedia or something. He's now emeritus professor over in Queen Mary College in London University of Theoretical Physics. And he was also now the president of the London Psychic Research Society. Well, one of the experiments I remember doing was actually we had a stick with a 4-inch nail on the end, and we hypnotized one of the students, one of our friends. We hypnotized him to change his perception. We said, this nail on the end of the stick is red hot. And because that perception was changed, when we touched his skin with that room temperature nail, he screamed in pain because he perceived it to be hot. That's kind of ordinary. What I thought was extraordinary was to see a blister come up there, a burn mark coming up where that room temperature nail touched his skin. That's how powerful perception can be. It can create a burn when nothing is hot. And I always remembered that. Because of that, you realize the possibilities. If you have a tumor, if you can create a burn, can't you uncreate one? Can't you shrink a tumor? Sometimes if we perceive that we can't, then we don't. If we perceive it can be done, then things open for you. Of course, I know that Ajahn Canda said already very brilliantly, you've got to be careful not to think that it's only up to you, that you can cure your cancer, so stop complaining. No, it's more than that. It's the perception, is the possibilities which life gives you, which perception has, to use positively. Of course, the main reason why we have the idea of perception is like how we look at things, how we see things, what we choose to see. And there is a bit of choice there as well. There's so much stuff, so much data available for you. Why do you choose one thing to contemplate and not another thing? This is one of the reasons why sometimes people say, Ajahn Brahm, you're irresponsible. There's many things I should be doing, which I don't. There's only a certain amount of stuff you can do, so you want to make the best use of your mind, to use it in a positive way. Why is it we always remember the difficulties we went through in the past? Can't we let those go? Let them go, let them be free. Sometimes, when you have deep experiences and take all this data which you have through meditation and through Buddhism and through being a monk, over so many years, after a while, it does reaffirm, what, the way your mind works. Why is it that we think we have to go through trauma? Why can't we let it go? I say this seriously. I always was really interested in reading how the Buddha said with the law of karma, that if you do a really kind act, you go and give like a dana to anukampa, you go and help out with the washing up or whatever. If you do something kind, you don't just get, 1-to-1 back. You get 100 times benefits. Same as if you do a mean thing, you steal or something. It's not as if you just have to pay back one for one. Many, many times over you have to repay it back. So each one of us has done such a lot of bad karma in our lives. It's kind of impossible to pay it all back. You've done such a lot of amazingly good karma. It's almost impossible to get all its rewards. You have almost a huge store of goodness and also a huge store of badness as well. How can it work? To be able to kind of activate that store of goodness or store of badness, we have to perceive it first. Once you start to perceive it, it's one of the things which I notice. Why that sometimes I just get miserable, sometimes I get really happy. I notice if one miserable thing happens to me, then it opens the door for other miserable things. If a little bit of happiness comes, it's so easy to actually perceive other happy things. It's almost like a habitual tendency which you start to develop, which influences one's perception. It's also one of the reasons why if some people say they haven't got a nimitta, they haven't got any peace, haven't got any benefit at all yet, I always make sure that they say the 3 letters afterwards, yet. It's possible for you. Even though you haven't got anything yet, it's still possible. The yet is important. What that means is you never give up, you keep on going, and then it happens. One of the reasons why when anybody here says they had a nice meditation, that's why I love reading those questions, in the Q&A box in the evening. Sometimes if no one had written in, they'd seen lovely lights, or they got very peaceful or blissed out, I would write something in there. It's a bit deceitful, but it's encouraging. What that means is because it's encouraging, you actually don't give up the wrong things. You give up the wrong things, which is self-doubt. Self-doubt, there's no one in there anyway. Because there is no one in there anyway, you can actually amazing just the power which conditioning you, I can do this, actually does. It's one of the reasons why I said at the beginning of this retreat that usually people get the best experiences on the last day of the retreat. What day is it today? The last day of the retreat. The last full day. That's how I perceive it. It makes it more fun. And that means you can get some really, really deep meditations. Sometimes, if you see a light in the mind, is that a nimitta? Perceive it as one. Imagine it as a nimitta. Then see what happens next. I say perceive it as one. He says, isn't that being a bit truthful? You're unsure whether it is or isn't. Give it the benefit of the doubt. It's amazing how many times that becomes a real nimitta. You're using doubt. You're using perception for a positive means. I don't know why it is that people say, no, we can't do that. People are so negative towards themselves. Somehow or other you feel that if you give yourself the benefit of the doubt, then you'll be wasting time. Absolutely not. Give yourself that benefit of the doubt that you can. That's when Obama was the president. I quoted him many times. You can. Get fully enlightened. You can become a great Buddhist bhikkhuni. You can get great meditation even though you work so hard. And then it becomes possible. You see how perception can very easily just block you or clear the path open. So things like that, aches and pains. One of the things with wisdom, okay, I'm going to stop in a moment. Don't need to read your mind. One of the things I often noticed was just with sicknesses and diseases, how much of those are from perception. Why there's sometimes what people used to say miracles. Why is it that sometimes someone comes along, does some chanting, and you really have confidence in them. And then sometimes that perception's got more power than you could ever give it, believe in it. That's right. Perception's got more power than you can perceive. Once you understand what that is, it's the way that the mind has many options, many alternatives, but it chooses to focus on one rather than the other. It's one of the reasons why when people would ask me, how do you let go of the negativity of the past, the unpleasant experiences, the traumas? How can you be able to be free of the fear of the future? And it's always with having that perception of kindness towards your past and the future. It softens it up. When you perceive the past, no matter what happened to you, with kindness. Somebody really abused you. It's a hard one to say, but I know what I'm talking about. Someone abused you. I don't know why they did that, but I forgive them. I wish them all happiness in the future. If you can give that kindness, it makes the whole experience much softer. The softer it is, the easier it is to let go. And when it's let go of, you can let go of for such a long time. Okay, you say, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. This is how you perceive things. But I also remember a great little article which I read from one of the UK magazines after the Paddington rail crash. You remember that? 2 trains going into London, one coming out, and they crashed one early morning. Many people were injured or died. And the government had free counselling for anybody who wanted. And later on, some psychiatrists or psychologists, I forget who it was, but they wanted to check out those people who volunteered for the counselling and those who decided not to, which actually recovered better. You know who recovered better? And they made allowances for the severity of their injuries or what they saw. Sometimes those who received the counselling got much worse. That was the news. That was recorded. It was a survey, and the reason why I remembered it, because it was not what I expected. No, I like challenging things. And that is when I perceive things in a different way than others. And that can be just so freeing. Should I stop now before I get into more trouble?
Yes. Any trouble? Not in trouble.
Any trouble? So anyway.
I could do my Kung Fu moves otherwise.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.